Now I invite Soumya to introduce us to the next topic of the EFL.
Good evening, Jai Guru, Namaskar to everyone. Welcome. I'm here to introduce Nitai ji and Aryavan. Nitai ji is going to talk about the Education for Life principles, which is based on Paramahansa Yogananda's principles of education. Nitai ji is co-founder of Education for Life with Swami Kriyananda, who is the author of Swami Kriyananda wrote this book, Education for Life, based on which we have the schools and we are also practicing principles in other areas of Education for Life. Nitai Deranja is a co-founder with Swami Kriyananda of Education for Life, and he started the first EFL elementary school in 1972. And he 1997 he co-founded the first EFL high school. In this current role as president of Education for Life International, he currently oversees a network of schools in the United States, Europe, and now in India. Nitai has two wonderful adult children who attended Education for Life schools. He is the author and co-author of 4 books. For Goodness Sake, Supporting Children and Teens in Discovering Life's Highest Values. The second book is The Art of Joyful Education, Journey to the Heart of Nature, and most recently, The Road to Maturity, which is the culmination of all the tools and practices we have been using for 50 years in Education for Life schools in US and Europe. I would also like to introduce Aryavan, who is going to be the keynote speaker here. Aryavan Maxwini, he is an ambassador of Education for Life here in India. He is a triple gift to us. Aryavan's parents, his father he is a teacher in Education for Life school. He himself went to the Education for Life school, and now he is also a trainer. He's training teachers for practicing Education for Life. Aryavan Maxwini was born and raised in Ananda spiritual community in California and has been a disciple of the spiritual master Paramahansa Yogananda for over a decade. After meeting Yogananda's direct disciple Swami Kriyananda at the age of 22, Aryavan spent the next 3.5 years traveling with and learning from him. At Swamiji's request, Aryavan became a teacher in an Education for Life school, which uses a system of education based on Yogananda's teachings. He now lives in India, working on different projects to bring the practical universal principles of yoga into mainstream education, including the creation of an Education for Life-based K-8 curriculum and the founding of an EFL Institute for a broader dissemination of this approach to teachers and parents in Europe, India, and around the world. So now I welcome Nitai ji and Aryavan to come and share some light over the further experience of Education for Life. Thank you. Welcome, Aryavan.
Is this working? Okay, great. So my name is Nayaswami Nitai, and I get to share with you the beginning of a presentation of Education for Life. Most of you have read Autobiography of a Yogi, but some of you haven't. So what in that book, it shows Paramahansa Yogananda his evolution as spiritually, at least as a model for us. When he was about 22 years old, he had his first experience of cosmic consciousness, which is described in the autobiography of a yogi. And shortly after that, his guru, Sri Yukteswar, came up to him and he says, well, are you going to keep all the honey for yourself? And the idea of that, all the spiritual realization that he had, was he going to be content just to have it and keep it inside? And of course he didn't. And he responded by starting a school. It was in Dihika in 1916. So that would mean that Yogananda was 23 years old at that point. Started very humbly, kind of like a little shack. It had a bare floor. And he started working with about 7 boys at that point. And then for the next 3 years, that school continued to expand very rapidly. Was moved to Ranchi, had the backing of the Maharaja of Kazimbazar, and applications skyrocketed. They had many more applications they could have. I think they had room for about 200, and they had about 2,000 students. That came to an end quite abruptly, extremely abruptly. One morning, Yogananda was meditating in a quiet place that he'd found, a little storage shed on the campus, which has now been turned into a big shrine. If you go to Ranchi, it's quite a transformation. But he had the vision of the West, the Westerners, all these Westerners looking at him and calling to him. And he felt that was this important turning point in his life. He actually had Sri Yukteswar verify that, and then he actually prayed for Babaji to come and also collaborate, because it was such a, from a human point of view, it was a mind-boggling change. I mean, especially in 1920 in India, to think about going to the West. First of all, you couldn't even go there because of World War I, and he ended up being on the first ship to make that passage. So it's just this enormous shifting of priorities. Plus, he was the headmaster in this school and the founder, which he must have been kind of I can't say that he was attached to it, but he felt responsible in some way. But to be moved out of that in such a quick way was a powerful experience. When he came to the United States, even for the next, I think Piaji showed me some his highlights, or he was publishing a list of ideas or things that he wanted to implement. And even up to 1929, which is this particular one, at the top of the list was to establish how to live schools in the West. Well, what he found out was that it wasn't time. The parents weren't ready. Parents who don't appreciate yoga and Vedanta and all these things are not going to enroll their children in a school, parents being quite conservative usually that way. So that got put on the back burner, and it wasn't until Swami Kriyananda founded Ananda Village, which was a magnet to draw in parents who did want this kind of education, that we could start the schools in 1972. So they've grown. Today we get to hear 2 wonderful expressions of that. We're going to have a short talk by Dr. Amita Wattal, who is supervising the bringing of these principles into the public education sector in Gurgaon. And then Soumya will come back, Tyagi Soumya will come back, and she'll share about the efforts right here in Pune of founding an EFL school. But I wanted to just shortly talk about what can we bring, because Yogananda is obviously the inspiration for Education for Life. He didn't leave that much in written form about what Education for Life would look like or how it would operate. So he did a couple of things. There's a couple of articles one called The Balanced Life, one called The Psychological Chart, which are available. If you're interested, there's a edforlife.org website that has them. You can read them on there. But I wanted to share a story. It's the only story I know of that happened while he was a teacher in a school at Ranchi. And it just shows Yogananda in a very typical situation. 2 boys are upset with each other, and they start fighting with each other. How many teachers have had to deal with that? We were looking at Soumya's school the day before, and all of a sudden 2 boys are, and so it's a very common situation. So, but this little story was shared by one of the students of his later on in life, and he wrote a little story about those days. He said, so the boys were having a hard time, so Yogananda, it was a residential school. So he didn't tell them, he didn't say, don't fight, and stop fighting. Because that's the approach adults usually use, right? You tell the kids what you want them to do and then almost never do it. They always find another way to respond. So what he did, though, is he arranged that they would have to share the same bed. And so he put them in the bed, and here's all of a sudden you're having to sleep with your enemy. And so they were, restless and stuff, but eventually they calmed down and they kind of went to sleep. Well, at that point, the teacher, Yogananda, comes up behind the bed, and very surreptitiously he reaches over and he flicks the ear of one of the boy with his fingers. Pop! And then he steps back. And the boy that got the finger in the ear wakes up, and he really looks at his enemy, and he's definitely sure that he'd done it. So he starts pounding on him, and then finally they calm down again. They go back to sleep. Yogananda cups up another time. He flicks the other boy's ear, and so now they have to repeat it. And but this time he stands close by. And so when they finish that round of fighting, they both look at him and they go, "Oh." And the message was delivered, but it was delivered in a very uncommon way. It was a very creative way. It was a way that only probably worked in that particular incident with those particular 2 boys, because Yogananda knew those boys and he knew how they would respond, and so he was able to come in and provide an avenue for them to grow. Well, that's the job of a teacher, any teacher, but especially in education for life. The challenge is, how can you work with the students in front of you to help them to grow? To help them to grow how? Help them to grow towards higher consciousness. Swami Kriyananda defines it in Education for Light as the goal is maturity, the maturity being the ability to relate to realities other than your own. It's very easy to say, very hard to do. So the challenge of a teacher is in any situation, whether you're teaching math, whether you're teaching French, or anything else, for an Education for Life teacher, the outward curriculum is secondary, because it's a tool. It's a tool to help them grow, and to look at the curriculum that way changes the whole dynamics of what you're doing. And just to give one example, in math, I've taught a lot of math. Well, it's nice to learn quadratic equations and all these different things, but very few people use quadratic equations later in life. What they do use is the ability to concentrate, the ability to problem solve, those kinds of qualities. So for an Education for Life teacher, those go to the fore. I'm teaching math because everybody's going to use concentration later in life. Everybody's going to learn problem solving during life. We can learn it right now. We can practice it in math class. And then, of course, everything makes sense. Also makes sense to the students when you explain it that way, because inevitably, if you teach high school math, somebody's going to come up to you and say, why do we have to study this? And so this is a good way to answer that question. So as we work with these principles, it's a joy. It's a challenge. It's a challenge because, in a way, we're reoriented education. Education has gotten very externalized in terms of what the goals are. A friend of mine said, we define ourselves, he says, I do math, therefore I am. So we get our definitions by the test scores we get, or by the teacher's approval, or by what our friends think about us. Education for Life, the goal is different. The goal is to continue to cultivate that awareness of self and take it through all the different stages and layers of development till we get to what Yogananda called his work, self-realization. But you can work on that with children, but it has to become in a very different way than you work with adults. It's no accident that all the children are outside playing games, doing artwork, running around. Nobody's in here, right? So what works for adults doesn't work for kids. Unfortunately, a lot of education kind of assumes that's supposed to be the case, that children are supposed to sit there and act like adults, but it doesn't work very well. So I want to give you two examples before I'm going to call Dr. Amita up because she has to leave. Uh-oh, you need to come up right now. Yes, okay, I'm going to come back later and I'll finish it off, but come up. Yeah, she has to catch a plane back to Gurgaon, so I want to give her a chance to talk. It's been a great joy for me and a blessing and an inspiration to get to work with her these past 7 months or so. She's the supervisor for the whole education program there. I won't take too long, you can. And I won't even try to list all the credentials that she has. She's very well known in educational circles in India, has served on many, many boards, and is a delight. The most important thing is she's a delight to work with. So.
Jyotish ji, Devi ji, Dhyana ji, Piya ji, Jaya ji, to all the distinguished guests who are present here this afternoon, to two people who have been absolutely amazing to work with, Nitai and Aryavan. I think I should give them a very big hand. Well, this is my first with the Ananda Foundation. But what I do want to say from the very start is that Piyaji gave me this opportunity to initiate and think about education for life in her schools. And I think it's the most exceptional way of life because it is where the registers of life meet: action, thought, service. And what better place than in schools? I was feeling a bit left out that we weren't an EFL school. We were constantly told there's an EFL school and there's a school. So we thought, and I particularly with Piyaji discussed this, why do we need EFL in our schools? And when we talk about schools, I talk about schools, which so many of us have graduated from the CBSE board, the IB board, the government aided, the aided. And it's been quite a trauma for many of us to have come out of these schools. I know I was expelled from 2. And here I am, a principal, an educator for so many years. What I do want to say is that I think education for life in schools like government schools, private schools, is extremely necessary today because the families are dysfunctional. There's crime and violence. There's complete media overload. There's so much of competition amongst teachers and parents and students. Children have become trophy kids. Unless you're in the newspaper and you won an award which you've actually paid for, you're nobody. Now, what is this that we're growing up with? I have worked with innumerable organizations like the Ramakrishna Mission or the Dayanand Mission or Sisters of Charity or the various convents. Everyone has tried. Some have been very structured, some have been very flexible, some have become moral science classes. But I think, and I believe, that the Education for Life program of way of life or approach to life is something that if it's brought in, will be here to stay and will affect the lives of millions because it has within it so many aspects which actually are connected to 21st century skills that we consistently talk about. And I think what is essential is that how do we position this in our schools? Because our teachers will say, oh, this is another SUPW, as UK, another period wasted. But that's not what it is about. It's about positioning this and making it an integral part of learning and life. We do not have to go to sacred places. The grounds of our school is holy land. This is where our pilgrimage starts and ends. This is where we find our universe with its loops and bends. If that is what school is, then certainly EFL is the pilgrimage that we are on, and we have to make it happen. And with Nitai and Aryavan, bringing that flame in, and with people like Soumya, her help, and my observations and listenings, we've been trying a lot in these 4 to 6 months, and it's been affecting lives. We've been trying to affect the teaching pedagogies by teacher training, because you can't leave it like a workshop. It has to have a certain sense of a curriculum which is not prescriptive, but descriptive. A descriptive curriculum, which lets the teacher teach the how of learning, not the what, and let her be free. So whether it is physics, or chemistry, or biology, or English, education for life has to run like a thread through the fabric of these subjects. So if a child, and that is the kind of curriculum that we plan, that when Soumya comes over to Gurgaon to be with us soon in December with some of her teachers, and with the help of Nitai and Aryavan, we're going to weave out this curriculum. And I promise you, Jyotishji and Deviji, that we will make it happen. We will make it happen. There's a lot of material that she has. There's a lot of work that I have done over the decades in development. And I think what we have to essentially look at is that how do we look at a holistic child? Who is a holistic child? A child, and at 4 levels, as an individual, compassion and love and care and understanding and dignity and perseverance, as a community of mutual respect and understanding of diversity, reconciliation, as a national, at a national level with the children, where they talk of citizens' rights, human rights, where they talk of the rights of the rivers and the trees and the mountains and the environment, and that becomes integral, and we give a voice to them, a voice to the birds and the bees, and of course global issues. The whole understanding of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. There is the whole connection of East meets West, as the Master said. The whole idea of the world is a family. And that's what has to be deeply integrated into our curriculum. Because there is a saying in Sanskrit which says, Charitam udara vikara Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Create your character so large. And as was said this morning, what wonderful words when you talked about the expansion of the consciousness and to envelop. And so the whole understanding of the community, which will be brought into every classroom, because I have worked in areas where there are no examinations in the school. Why do we need to have exams? Create assessment models. Today, India is ready for a new board. Let's have the National Curriculum Education for Life framework. I'm not saying it will happen tomorrow, but it will happen because the ground is ready. It is fertile. We are waiting for it. And all of us will make it happen together. So if there can be an IB board and a CBSE board and a government board, why can't there be an EFL board? And we have to look at that. And we have to ensure it happens. And all of you sitting here, I think we should start talking about it. Because as Piaji said in her talk, magnetize it into our lives. Magnetize it into the world of education and learning. It's been far too long. And you said something so wonderful yesterday in one of the meetings, when you said that let's do it before somebody else takes it on. And why should anybody else take it on? We are the people, you are the people who've created this fabulous idea, understanding. The Master has come back to his land as far as schooling is concerned. He went from Ranchi to America, and now India is ready. It's ready to move forward. And so I'm really excited about the way we're going to look at teacher training, to look at pedagogy, to look at the way how we integrate, because it cannot just be a meditative practice and an activity. Otherwise, how will we give it to the parent? Because every child is doing these days a lot of yoga, a lot of activities. We have to ensure that if a child is doing physics and doing heat, light, and electricity, they put off the lights. Otherwise, they remember that there's a farmer in Dhanbad who's going down in the mines, his lungs are filled with coal, and he will be dead. And his wife will not be looked after by the coal barons. The interdependence of life. That's integral to living. That's integral to what every child has to understand, that people are people because of other people. And so that's what we have to bring in. That if a child is talking in geography about rice production, they don't waste that idli or that rice or that poha on their tiffin, because they remember that there's a farmer in Tirai who's standing in leeches, where food distribution is so bad in this country, it doesn't reach people. And he would have committed suicide, and we will be responsible for that suicide, because there is no I, there is a we. The we is what we will bring into Education for Life, which is there. Education for Life talks about the we. It talks about the individual, and it talks about the we in so many wonderful ways. I'm deeply blessed that you have given me this opportunity. I don't know what more to say. Thank you, and God bless you.
Okay, so we're going to just, oops, the next speaker is running around in the room here. I wanted to just let you see the scope. So with the school, with Dr. Wattel, it's 400 students, about 40 teachers, grades nursery school through 7th grade. There are 3 other schools in Gurgaon that will be branching out to eventually, starting with the high school in January. But that's one application of Education for Life. The other application is much more local. And I wanted to ask Soumya to come up and talk about what's happening here in Pune. Okay.
Thank you. So, I have so big dignitaries in front of me, I don't know what, but I'll share how that's what, I think that is what I need to do here. How the school started in Pune. With lots of blessing, what we all are talking about is responding to change and challenge with courage. And that was the seed that it was pandemic. And we kept hearing that children are going through, because suddenly the schools are closed, kids cannot go down to play with their friends, there is no company, no physical activity, no creative other alternatives, they could not go for sports. So we kept hearing from the parents that, what do we do? Because still the schools did not learn to go online, because our teachers are not used to it. They are not, most schools, they don't have this kind of a technological facility where you can immediately switch to the online school. And so schools could not start at that time. So we came up, Prisha and me and Xenia, we came up with this idea, how can we help these children? How can we help them to feel happy and not feel sad all the day because they don't have anything to do, they can't meet people, they can't interact with their age group. So the idea came from what we all are talking about, thinking about others. And the idea came from the fact, when we were talking, this thing kept coming back to us, that we have to tell them that, of course this is a challenge, but how do we face it with joy and cheerfulness? So we started with 1 hour every day, and we called it Camp Mukunda. And we started with Mukunda's story. How did he face challenges? How did he convince his friends? What all I mean, how did he felt God in his life? How he was convincing his friends that God is there, and how, in what different forms and energy God can help us and guide us. So that was the starting point. And children just loved it. They loved it, and so their parents, because kids were sitting at home, parents saw that their kids are just happy after the Camp Mukunda, the one session, 1 hour everyday session. So then the request started that, do you have any such school? What after this? You know? And then slowly, of course, we went on for 1.5, 2 months, Niyati? Yeah. And then by the time it was also a time when we could have started saying that, okay, let's think about it. So then, thanks to, I was living in a community nearby, so Aditya ji and Bhavani, and we sat together and we started thinking, what do we do now? This request is coming. How do we kind of expand and keep expanding our help and reach out to more families? And that's how we said, "Theek hai, chalo." We respond to that. And so whoever asked for school, we said, yes, we can do it. Fortunately, we had teachers, thanks to Prisha. Prisha is not here. She has been doing education for life for so many 10 years in Pune and India. So we had a lot of people who were kind of introduced to education for life. And then Nitai, many of them had taken further course with Nitai, like I'm one of them. So we said, okay, we have EFL trained teachers, we have willing parents, we have willing children, let's just support. So we didn't even think about what will be the fees, how many days. Everything just kept kind of expanding as it came, because it has to grow organically. This is something which was God's plan, is how we were responding to it. And so we started with this 5 little ones, 2.5, 3-year-olds. We started meeting their parents first. And we started telling them what is education for life, how does it work, how we are going to work with your children, what kind of commitment do we want from you, what will be your involvement. And so working with parents started happening, and the support started coming in. And willing teachers, who gets in this age and time, it's 3 years. Most of our teachers are volunteering. Most of our teachers. And they are all now EFL trained. This can happen only with their grace. The way Swamiji has shown us what is seva, through his own example, he has lived as a disciple, what is true disciple, what is seva. And I think it's beautiful to have teachers as Guru Bhais, as Guru Sisters. And so everything happens in such a way as if God has planned it. Now one would imagine that, you have so much, everything is all settled. This school would have flourished. How many children do you have? 300, 400? No. Master wants all of us to learn. This is all of our spiritual growth, how we are practicing what we have learned. That is the opportunity given to all of us. And fortunately, all of us take it that way. We all keep reminding each other in meetings. So there is no one person who is kind of saying that you do this and it happens. If there is a program, everybody shares what are their thoughts. If there is an assessment, we all come together and we say that how should we do it? What should be the design of the assessment paper? What kind of questions we should ask so that children can apply their real experience to respond to it. And they don't have to mug up and say that, okay, this is what so-and-so ma'am taught me in this formula, and so I'm going to write it down and calculate this problem sum. So the problem solving became real in their life. Experience becomes real in their life. Yesterday, what Nitai was quoting about these 2 boys getting into this little fight, I was observing this one boy, he did not hit back. Thrice the other boy was hitting him, this boy did not hit him back. That is, isn't that courage? Willpower that you're not going to respond in the same manner. Now this boy is one of the brightest child in our school. In terms of his energy, and I'm not talking when I say bright, it's not about intellectual only. It's about his energy. I was taking his grade 3 student, and so one day I was working with him, and we were working about food. How does food help us? What do you eat? Because he comes from a very different background. He says, and then we started, why do we need to eat food? And then we started thinking about that when we are not well, what kind of food we should eat. And after listing down everything, this boy says, but one very important thing is, you have to be positive. I haven't taught this. This was not my curriculum. But that is what happens in EFL school. And so we are blessed. And every year, it's 3 years now, we are all learning. So we learned little bit about accounts, we learned a little bit about administration, we learned little bit about legal formalities, and we are still learning. And each day becomes like, my colleagues were telling me that it's like one petal added into that flower, which is blossoming as an EFL school. And I just feel that it's such a blessing. So if we have to say what is EFL school, it is a combination of everyone's positive attitude towards it. And what is a positive attitude is, you have the readiness to face whatever comes. Be ready for all the challenges. Remain problem solver. Don't look at the problem as a problem. The moment, I keep saying that in many other places also, when somebody asks me a question, I said, become a solution oriented. Don't become a problem person, but I don't have to say that in school. My kids are already like that. They are solution oriented. So when we have to face certain challenges in life, when we meet certain challenges in life, if we have learned this quality, it will keep us going, it will keep us uplifted. We will always have kind of bright way to look at the situation. And that is what I think so far we are enjoying, that all of us are learning with children. All the teachers are learning, we are all growing. And yeah, especially me, I was sharing the other day, I said, when I came on to this school, I came from a very typical power person, that if I say it has to be kind of followed, nobody questions me. I came from that background, and I did that for 15 years. Imagine how difficult it is to get rid of it. And every time I received a no with these fearless teachers who are far more spiritually progressive than me, and they would fearlessly say no to me for certain things. And I'm like, how? I mean, in my mind, I used to say that, and I used to feel bad about it. And today, I'm so happy that I don't feel that way. I don't feel it that way. I feel it as wait a minute. There's a lesson to be learned from here. Somebody's saying something, I need to think about it. May not be always, it may not be the case. People may not be doing it for me to learn. Sometimes it's my role to make them learn something. But I don't react immediately the way I used to react. And I take it as a very, very deep spiritual growth, because ego is my challenge. All my classes I have been discussing, how do I get rid of this? How do I get rid of my ego? I have been on the education for almost 25 years, never been on the stage this comfortably. Today I'm able to speak because I said, Master, I remember Swamiji saying this. I was just practicing, repeating in my head. Swamiji said, I'm not talking, God is talking. So if I'm wrong, I'm not wrong. Something like that. I'm not exactly saying that, but that's what I understood. That Swamiji said, he was talking about ego, and he was giving this example that when I give public talk, this is what I think in my head. And I was reminding myself constantly that I'm not going to talk. I'm not talking for myself. I'm not here to say that I did something. I'm here to share so that we all get inspired and take whatever steps we can take to expand this work. And there are many different ways to do this. This is one way, the way the EFL school in Pune is coming up, but there are different ways to know and practice education for life for parents and for schools and for teachers, and even in your own personal life. There are life skills and a lot of other things. Thank you so much. Aryavan?
So I imagine some of you have been sitting for quite some time. So we're going to do something a little experiential. But first I want you to take a moment, and on a scale of 1 to 10, I want you to assess the level of your energy. Where is your energy? So let's say a 10 is the most energetic, joyful, dynamic you've ever been. 1 is whatever the opposite of that is. We don't need to go into detail or give examples. And then 5 is, somewhere in the middle, your average baseline. So take a second, think to yourself, 5, 7, 4, 11, whatever it is. This is just you being honest with you. We're going to, for just one moment, we're all going to stand up where you are. You don't need a lot of space for this one, but you will need to be mindful of your neighbor. So as with everything in education for life, I'm going to give an instruction, but you have to make it real for you. So if you are up, if I say put your arm out like this and somebody's lovely face is here, I trust you to adapt to the realities of your life. And what we're going to do is one of the what's called the superconscious living exercises. It may even come up in one of your sessions today. We're just going to do one. We're going to do the one that doesn't require a lot of movement. But these exercises are combining physical movement with an affirmation. So the affirmation for this one is, I am positive, energetic, enthusiastic.
I am positive, energetic, enthusiastic.
And we're going to move our arms. So again, watch your neighbor, but we're going to go, I am positive, energetic, enthusiastic. Jumping is optional. I am positive, energetic, enthusiastic. I am positive, energetic, enthusiastic. Believe it. I am positive, energetic, enthusiastic. Now take a moment before you sit down. Oh, you can put your arms down. But I appreciate the obedience. Take a second and check, where is your number right now? 10. Boom! That's what I'm talking about. You may be seated or you may remain standing if you like. So, I'm going to assume that's the answer for all of you. But at the very least, one truth I can see, even if you aren't able to perceive an increase in your energy, even from here, I can see many, many times more smiles, even in the far back than I did before. And I know you're in the back because it's convenient. I'm not going to say that you're backbenchers or anything. You entered, there was an empty seat, you sat. But even from here, I can feel the increase in your energy, the increase in your joy level. At the Education for Life school that I attended in Palo Alto, California, we had rules. Every school has rules. Thou must do this. You have to walk when you're in the halls. You have to, eat your lunch without spilling it all over your neighbor. You have to sit in your chair when class is happening. These types of rules. But ours are a little bit different. And I think they reveal something about Education for Life that makes it special. Maybe not completely unique. I believe there are lots of individuals spread across the world who are doing just this. But what Education for Life says is that there is a purpose to life. There's a purpose to education. And it's not always what we think. So these rules are, I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, but they are things like, these are the things you absolutely have to do as a student of this school. Choose happiness. Laugh often. Be a loving friend. Use your will to create good energy. Find the joy within. When we think, this is something I usually ask people to think about at the top of one of these things is, why educate in the first place? Why have school? Why do all of this? We put so much energy into the education of our children. We create big institutions, beautiful buildings, all the way down to, huts and villages. But it's a centerpiece of every civilization. Now, what it has become is preparation for career, by and large. It is, I want my child to be able to provide for themselves, to have security. And that is an important thing. That is not something to be ignored. But I'll tell you a story of a friend of mine, because this is the challenge, is we're trained as a society, this is just pervasive, it's everywhere, to seek material satisfaction, to seek material wealth, to gather as much as we possibly can, because that'll be how we measure success. And then we can handle anything. If something comes up, we can handle it. The last 2 years, of course, were a little bit different than the previous 60 or more, or 100 if you go back to the Spanish flu. And things changed for everybody. This was kind of the great equalizer. So I had a friend, a very wonderful gentleman, and he's a very well-connected man. He's very, he's built quite a nice life. He wouldn't describe himself as wealthy, but he has, he's made it in the world. He's very successful. He's very well known. He made it very high, actually ran a whole series of hospitals within India. And during the second wave, he caught COVID. And it was a pretty severe case. And this was right around the time, we all remember, of when everyone was catching COVID. And we weren't ready medically for that. We didn't have enough supplies. We didn't have the infrastructure that we needed in order to respond to it. And this was not limited to India. We saw it even in countries like the United States, which would have said we can handle anything. But even there, they were having shortages of things and challenges in getting care. But this gentleman, who was extremely well connected, knew politicians, knew heads of state, knew all of these people, was connected to them, and had been running hospitals. Even he could not get medical care during that time. With all of the worldly connections he had made, with all of the wealth he had accumulated, he was stuck. And thankfully, by God's grace, he recovered. But we see that there is a limit to the effectiveness of material wealth, of possession, that even the richest amongst us will one day leave this realm. And all of the money that they accumulate and all of the wealth and all of the power will not stop that day. So then, what should we try to accumulate? What should we do? Should we just give up? Should we say nothing matters if it's all going to end in death anyway? Well, I'd like to circle back to that last school rule. Find the joy within. Now, I would argue, and I think if you're in this room, whether you're already with Ananda, whether this is your first time hearing any of this, whether you just got the link last night and you're tuning in to something you know nothing about, if we trace all of the things that we do in our life, all of the outward things, all the inward things, all of the feelings, the actions, the activities, the goals, at the end of the day, we're seeking some kind of fulfillment. Everyone who came here, either now or at a previous time, felt something that was missing in their life. You may even have a happy life. You might have a nice life where you have a nice job and you have family, and maybe you don't even feel you're defining yourself based on those outward things. But many people do. And children especially are very responsive to their environment. And right now, children are growing up in an environment where people don't know where joy comes from. There is a pervasive belief that joy comes from outside. That if I can get the best job, if I can have the best partner, if I can get the right car, then I'll feel joy. But the problem is that joy was inside all along. Swamiji used to tell a story of the musk deer. And for those of you who don't know, they have that scent, that musk, that is created naturally by their bodies. And he would say that the musk deer, when it comes to its full scent, will almost go mad looking for this scent. Where's the source of this scent? And sometimes even throw themselves off of cliffs looking for this scent. Now, all of us, most of us, came to this realization as adults. And that's wonderful. It's better late than never. But we don't have to wait. We don't have to wait for our children. Because the truth is, and for those of you who have children, those of you who have worked with children, you know that they know it already. Children already know that joy is in the playing, that joy is in the breeze, that joy is in seeing an animal do something silly. That joy is in everything because joy comes naturally to them. It's only when we get older that we start to forget. Where is that joy coming from? So all education for life is saying, what if we built our education around the idea that joy is the goal of life and that everything else is a result of that? That the way that I understand other people, the way that I develop myself, the way that I understand that I'm a part of our earth, our entire universe, that all of these things are actually the things that will help us to understand that joy. And then, ironically, material success is effortless. Because we're always trying to find that joy, but when we go into the material, we find it's empty. But when you go for the joy first, the material comes. There was an interesting study, because we work with a lot of life skills. We've talked a lot today about courage and about service and about all of these different kind of enduring skills, the inside skills. So Google wanted to optimize their hiring process. They're, I think the second or third most valuable company in the world right now. Many thousands of employees around the world. And their CEOs are classically, scientifically trained, and they had, of course, already built a really successful algorithm. So they wanted to create an algorithm for hiring new people. How can we get the best people? We'll figure out the key things to look for. So again, being PhD in various sciences, they assumed that what they would find is that highly educated, highly intellectual people would be their best employees. But they were wrong. They made a list of the 10 skills most associated with the people who are most successful with their company, the people who helped Google's bottom line. This is a purely dollars and cents equation. This isn't a feel good, let's have a nice workplace, let's hold hands and, make a search engine and kind of dominate the world. No, this was, what will help us do that even better? And they found that the top 6 or 7, the top 6 qualities that were needed, none of them were academic skills. They were, can you be a good leader? Can you be a good teammate? Are you emotionally intelligent? Are you able to deal with your own emotional state? All the way down at number 7, we finally get, do you know how to engineer? Or whatever it is. So it's very ironic to me because it's actually, some people feel, and this is I feel like one of the big challenges of sharing EFL is people feel we have to choose. That I would like my child to be courageous, I would like them to be kind and compassionate, but I need them to be successful outwardly, I need them to be able to provide for themselves. But the irony is that is not even true. By following that path, what we set them up for is either potentially an outwardly successful life, but very likely a midlife crisis at 40, and they don't know where to go from there. Whereas, if you train someone to be able to respond to life's challenges appropriately, to be able to enjoy the world around them, to be able to enjoy everything, you've created somebody, you've helped someone to grow into, more accurately, someone who will succeed in every avenue of their life. They will not be able to help themselves from success. Now, it may not look like how you're expecting, because every soul is born onto this planet to learn different lessons and to add something different to the world. But every soul is here to add something special. What would the world be like if we didn't have artists? What would the world be like if we didn't have people who decided to dedicate themselves to serving others through nonprofits and NGOs? What would the world be like without music or sports? So we have to expand. Once we can expand our vision of what true success looks like, then we can say, okay, now we can get started. Now we can help children to see and realistically just to hold on to that idea that if they can seek joy in their life, if they can use that as the compass point to which everything in their life flows, then they'll find total success. They'll find true success. And there's a saying, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And I've been thinking about that a lot, because some people say it, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. But I was thinking, somehow it seems more appropriate if you love what you do. One thing I've noticed about students from EFL, there's nothing they can't love. Life throws all sorts of stuff on us. We're not always able to choose our circumstances. Even if we do very, very well in the exams, even if we get number 1, that doesn't necessarily mean we'll even get the job we want. We may have to do something that was not our first choice. And if you see that as a failure, if you see that as something that is happening to you and it's not fair, you won't be happy. But if you see that as just another thing that we can transcend, another thing to overcome, another challenge to figure out, another thing to experience joy in, you'll never work a day in your life. Joy to you.
Thank you, Nitai ji, Aryavan, Soumya ji, for not only sharing the passion that they have brought to AFL, but also giving us live examples, Aryavan being one. We'll also be having another student from EFL which will be performing Bharatnatyam after this. But again, thank you very much for bringing something which is very fundamental, not only to Ananda, but to the entire nation. Thank you once again. We'll be having Bharatnatyam, which is Indian classical dance, in few minutes. We'll set up the stage and then the performance will be held. So please hold on.
I just wanted to share the books I was talking about, which is written by the EFL practitioners for 50 years. This is Calm and Compassionate Children, which is done by Suzanne Usha. There's this book, Head and Heart, which is talking about all the experiences parents and teachers have shared, and also children. This is the book which is written by Nitai, For Goodness Sake. This book holds a lot of activities which parents can use with their children, with the families. And this is another book which is I Came From Joy. I'm feeling so happy. Hardly, I don't know how many such approaches we'll have. This is a library for an institute, once you have this bunch of books. I mean, you have all the answers you want for your school or children. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, these are all the books are available in the stall at Education for Life. Thank you. Thank you.